The Atlanta Hawks have some pretty big decisions to make this offseason because for the first time since 1975, they had the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anyone when I say that the last 10 years or so of Atlanta Hawks basketball has been the absolute definition of mediocre. You play just okay enough to get into the playoffs, but no real success, aside from the one year that you went to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021. So in an effort to break away from that mediocrity, I have some ideas that Atlanta can use for free, I'm not going to charge them, to increase the potential and raise the ceiling of this team's future. I'm going to start with some trades, and then we're going to actually move into the draft itself. So first and foremost, Trae Young. The worst kept secret this offseason is that the Hawks are shopping Trae Young. Trae has come out and said that he wants to stay in Atlanta, he wants to build a culture there, he wants to win there. And from a human perspective, I understand that because that's the team that decided to give you a chance. You live there, you have built some sort of rapport there. So I understand the human need to want to make a situation work. This one just isn't. The two names that have been thrown around the most when it comes to Trae Young has been the Los Angeles Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs. And with all due respect to everyone involved, I don't believe it is in Atlanta's or Trae's best interest to go to LA. LeBron could very well retire in the next 2 years. Anthony Davis, I will say, has done a much better job this year specifically of being healthy, but that has not been the norm for him. And outside of that, the only other piece that you have is Austin Reeves, who you very well may have to trade to get Trae Young. So if I was Trae Young, if I was the Atlanta Hawks, I would do everything that I could to reroute Trae to San Antonio. It's good for Trae because he gets to play with Victor Wembanyama, the very future of the league. And the Spurs have a ton of draft picks and a bunch of draft assets that they can send to Atlanta to kickstart this rebuild. So now that Trae's been traded, the rest of this is actually going to be pretty easy. You want to have a youth movement in Atlanta, so anything that doesn't fit that timeline has to go. As far as DeJounte Murray is concerned, let's just go ahead and send him to Miami. He's already teased the fact that he wants to play there. Close to the trade deadline, he made a couple references that he wants to play there, or he feels that he's going to play there one day. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's make this happen. Let's give DeJounte Murray to Miami, and in return, get Tyler Hero and a 2030 first-round pick. And then the last trade of this video, we are going to send Clint Capella to the Memphis Grizzlies for some role players and some salary filler and a 2030 first-round pick. The Grizzlies are heading into this retool era. Ja's going to be fully healthy after his injury this past year, and they are going to want to make some moves. Jaren Jackson for them does not rebound particularly well, despite the fact that he's 7 feet tall. So having a traditional center next to him could prove very valuable for that team. So let's go ahead and help them. And in return, we get some bench guys, we get some decent role players, good locker room guys, and again, of course, that 2030 first round pick. And now, everyone's favorite part of the year, the draft. This draft in particular has been touted as not very strong or even weak in a lot of cases. I don't think that is the case. It doesn't have an outright superstar. I'm not going to deny that it doesn't. However, there are going to be some really good quality role players for everyone involved in this draft. There are probably legitimately 20 to 30 legit role players who are going to get decent minutes in the NBA next year just coming from this draft. So you really can't go wrong with the first pick here. And in my eyes, because you've traded away Trae Young and because you've traded away DeJounte Murray, you need a new lead guard. And there is no other guard in the draft better equipped to handle that kind of responsibility than Stephon Castle out of UConn. If you're unfamiliar with Stephon's game, I need you to not go to ESPN.com and look at the box score stats because they aren't going to be amazing. They're not going to pop out in any sort of way. You need to watch the UConn games. Everyone on that team's stats is going to be dwindled a little bit because of how talented that team is. They're on poise to have a three-peat. They just won the last 2 national championships. So everyone's true talent cannot actually be quantified when playing within that system. So when you watch Stephon Castle, what you're going to notice is an ability to read the floor, the ability to play 94 feet of defense if asked to, the shooting efficiency, the ability to be a floor general, and if you surround him with the correct pieces, you're going to excel, and that's exactly what Atlanta needs this year. And now, because of the Trae Young trade to San Antonio, we have acquired the number 4 pick. And there is not another option that I see that would fit this team more perfectly than drafting Stephon Castle's teammate at UConn, Donovan Clingan. Again, his stats are not going to pop off in any sort of way, but what you are going to see is an elite rim protector, an elite rebounder, an elite floor guy, like understanding where people need to be defensively and what positions they need to be in, understanding coverages, and most importantly, a very underrated ability that he has that he did not get to showcase except for a very few moments at UConn is his high post offensive reading the floor. He could be that elbow hub that you see a lot of centers do now, like Jokic, like Domantas Sabonis, like Alperen Şengün, even guys like Wendell Carter and Jared Allen are getting in on the mix. He can be that next step. He is a very good playmaker. You just have to give him the opportunity. So now that our 2 big drafts are out of the way, we have the core for our future. We have Stephon Castle. We have Tyler Hero. We have candidate for most improved player next year, Jalen Johnson, and Donovan Clingan. Now, there are a couple other ancillary pieces that I don't know what we're going to do with yet. I don't know what you're going to do with Kongwu. I don't know about the rest of the bench and how that's going to fill out. But if you have those core 4, if you have Castle, Hero, Jalen Johnson, and Donovan Clingan, I can't think of a better foundation that a team can have than that 4. Now that you've done all of these moves, probably the most underrated thing about all these transactions is that you now have the ability to reset your franchise and reset your fan base in particular. Your fans have been expecting an Eastern Conference Finals push ever since that happened in 2021. And because it happened, they've started to sour a little bit on Trae and DeJounte in particular. Now that you have this ability to clean house and restock and retool, you can tell your friends, okay, here is our plan. We are going to draft 2 high IQ basketball guys and surround them with up-and-coming talent. And in an attempt to separate ourselves from the past of mediocrity, we're going to try to build towards a new future. And when you are a fan of a team in that situation, anything over the worst team in the league is viewed as a success. As long as you aren't going to come into the season win 10 games, you have won for that season because at the beginning, on the outset, you have decided that you were going to set clear and defined parameters of what this team could succeed year by year. Not to mention the fact that you are doing right by the people who have been in your organization and you have put equity into. You're sending Trae to an infinitely better situation than what Atlanta has right now. You're sending him to play basketball with a future MVP, a future multi-time defensive player of the year in Victor Wembanyama. For DeJounte, he wants to play in Miami. He seems like a Heat culture guy, and him and Jimmy Butler are very good friends. And even for Clint Capella, someone who hasn't been like a staple there necessarily, but he's been there long enough to garner respect within the organization. You're sending him to Memphis, where he has the ability to play with Ja and Desmond Bane and potentially another big swing that I have in another video later, and a defensive player of the year in Jaren Jackson Jr. So you're doing right by all the people who have helped you along the way while getting a fresh start. And I really don't think that there's a better case scenario for a franchise than that. But that's what I would do if I was the Atlanta Hawks GM. Tell me what you would do in the comments. And while you're down there, check the description. I have a Discord. I have an Instagram. Check me out on YouTube Shorts. I've got all kinds of other stuff, including TikTok, that you may find interesting if you're interested in short form content like that. So follow me on all those other places. Have a good day. And most importantly, tell somebody you love them.